All the indications are we are going to have a classic running of this race, the 66th edition of the Italian Grand Prix. Now, while my regular colleague, Derek Daly, is occupied with the IndyCar finale out in Laguna Seca, California, we're delighted to welcome former Ferrari driver and sports car world champion Derek Bell to our announced position. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you very much, Bob. Great to be back.
Thank you. There is Johnny Herbert ready to climb in. Let's take a look at some of the headlines into this weekend. There you see the drivers in their cars. We'll have the roll-off shortly. Let's take a look at some of the events that have led us to today's race.
Well, here we have an aerial shot of the circuit. The drivers see some new runoff areas, very interesting, lots more sand to fall off in. And this is a great lap by Coulthard, establishing dominance right throughout practice. The sand being tested by Schumacher here on Friday. He got back on the track without any damage, just to show that it works. And here we have an interesting shot, of course, of the two Benetton drivers praying together, and I thought they didn't talk, but there you go.
On Saturday, Coulthard improved and then could only wait as everybody assaulted his time. Gerhard Berger took a shot, but he could not get it done. On the darker side, Luca Badoer had this moment for Minardi in the Ascari chicane, backing it into the wall, flipping into the gravel trap. He visited the hospital, but he is fine and will race today. Meanwhile, Flavio Briatore of Benetton and Jean Todt of Ferrari considered the fact that each will have the other's drivers in 1996. An interesting conversation indeed. Here's a look at our starting grid. For the second time in his career, David Coulthard of Scotland is on pole. His lap averaging 152 miles an hour, the best in qualifying thus far this year. Michael Schumacher has been booed by the Tifosi, the legendary Ferrari fans, this weekend, and there have been kidnap threats. He's been leaving the racetrack under armed guard every day. On row 2, Gerhard Berger in his final drive for Ferrari in front of the fans here at Monza, doing a good job. Damon Hill, 15 points down with 6 races to go, desperately needs to do well. On row 3, Jean Alesi is using the newest spec Ferrari engine, revving to some 18,000 RPM, his last appearance here. Rubens Barrichello alongside. He promised a top 6 starting position, and he delivered for Jordan. On row 4, Mika Häkkinen missed the third row by just 1/1000th of a point with a big improvement in Saturday qualifying. Johnny Herbert knows he does not have a job with Benetton next year, and he has had some interesting things to say about his teammate. We'll talk about that later. On row 5, Mark Blundell of Great Britain has been told that he has a job with McLaren next year, but he does not know doing what. Heinz-Harald Frentzen will stay with the Sauber team. They are not using their latest spec Ford engine this weekend. On row 6 will be Martin Brundle with a new Mugen Honda engine with fly-by-wire throttle mechanism in his Ligier, alongside Eddie Irvine of Ireland, who has had nothing but a miserable time this weekend. Row 7, Olivier Panis of France in the Ligier and Jules Boullion in the Sauber. On row 8, Max Papis in the Footwork has been tearing up the gearbox all weekend. Mika Salo visits the last Formula One track that he has not raced before, Fort Tyrrell. On row 9, Ukio Katayama of Japan, who ran with the leaders last year before running off the racetrack. Luca Badoer is ready to race despite his big Saturday crash. Row 10, Pedro Lamy in the Minardi and the Footwork of Taki Inoue. On row 11, Andrea Montermini in the Pacific and the 40 of Roberto Moreno. And on row 12, Pedro Denitz in the 40 and Gianni Lavaggi in his last race before Swiss driver Jean-Denis Delatraz.
And as you go down into the Prima Variante, you're actually doing 215 miles an hour, down to third gear, 112 miles an hour out of there, up through sixth gear, 186 miles an hour through the Curva Grande. Really parabolica, 160 on the exit.
Now we've got a problem down in the Ascari chicane. David Coulthard, our pole sitter, has thrown it off the racetrack, but he is rolling, and I would imagine he will be able to get around, but as you see, a lot of dust in the air. Perhaps Coulthard not the only man off the racetrack at that point.
It makes you wonder, but of course, he was the first car to be there, so one assumes it was him.
Now here, Italian television is showing us what happened. Came through the corner at a tremendous lick, got it up on the curbs, and he appears to be the only man who got it off. Schumacher, coming through behind him, managed to get it stopped. In fact, it appears that David Coulthard slid all the way across the gravel and might have gotten his wheels on a solid surface, which is good for him. Now you see the field coming around. Coulthard not in the pole position at the bottom of your screen.
Will they let him up through? That's what are they going to do?
Now we're being told that Coulthard will have to start from the back in a car that undoubtedly has gravel in its radiator inlets, brake ducts, and what have you. So we've already had our drama to begin this race. There you see the track crews trying desperately to get the gravel off the Ascari chicane as the field of 26 prepares to come thundering through there at about 160 miles an hour.
That was a very, very silly thing to do. He's obviously, I mean, he's had such the most wonderfully controlled weekend, and there he is actually in the pit road having it checked out. He's going to have to start from the pit road, and the race is about to start, and he's still in there. What a disaster for him.
Well, the British have a phrase for that. He has blotted his copybook.
That's it. Now, everybody was talking about him and wanted him. I wonder if they're all wanting him so badly right now.
Red light, here comes the green. The two Ferraris to the right of your screen. Michael Schumacher drifts to his left to block. Braced by Ferraris now as they go down into the first chicane. They'll approach at close to 200 miles an hour. We had a red flag at this point a year ago, but it appears that the field will stream through. Heading now for the Curva Grande, up through the gearbox, approaching 210 miles an hour.
Yeah, they're really tramping through there. It was a very, very difficult. I think they all handled the first chicane extremely well. It's not easy, very tight, and it's like a bottleneck. Here they are, I think, very much under control, and it's nice to see for the first time. They're driving like Grand Prix drivers, not Formula 3.
Now into the first of the Lesmos, blinding right-handers. These curves were moved in just a little bit, retaining their basic radius, but providing more runoff area. And that is good news, that rather than sticking a chicane in there to slow the cars down, they simply move the corner in and let the racers race.
It's wonderful to see those two Ferraris there. They've got their new engines in. Both have got new engines for today's race. So let's hope that they hold together. Their reliability hasn't been too good of late. A lot of dust there coming out of the Ascari curve, but I think the workers have cleared it up pretty well. And, of course, everybody's going, hello, somebody's lost it.
Yep, we have a spin back there at Ascari. We have several spinners.
Did that look like a McLaren? One of them, a red and white car.
There's one of the Pacifics. Andrea Montermini has backed it in. One of the Saubers, is that?
Yeah, Frentzen.
Jules Boullion is climbing out.
And Coulthard apparently is still in the pits. So he had more than a problem than we think when he went off there. He did seem to hit it very hard.
Change of leadership as Michael Schumacher has been demoted to second place.
The track is totally blocked.
We will have a red flag. The track is blocked. One of the Jordans there.
Now, did they red flag that before they crossed the start-finish line? Exactly. So I was just thinking, can Coulthard start back at the front of the grid because they hadn't completed a lap when the red flag came out? And I guess the truth of it is, yes, he can go back to his original position. But will they have to get his training car out? Or can he start the car that he was in?
The race being stopped before the end of lap 2. Here's Massimiliano Papis going backwards. Actually, that was one of the Pacifics going by. Wow. A Jordan in there as well. I didn't see... yeah, there's Papis. That's a Footwork. Montermini backs it into the... I believe that's one of the water barriers they are now using. Plastic crates filled with water. There's Pedro Diniz. Andrea Montermini having a fairly typically Italian conversation with one of the corner workers there. Now, because the race was stopped on the second lap, they will restart the field in their initial positions. Drivers will take either their original race cars or their backup cars. And the race, I believe, will run its entire distance. And that is good news for David Coulthard, which will have for him an opportunity to restart from pole position. So, for the second year in a row, we have a red flag to begin the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Like that other great Italian art form, the opera, there is always drama in the Grand Prix of Italy. We'll take this opportunity for a timeout and return live to Monza for more of the Grand Prix of Italy. Stay with us. Welcome back live. A red flag has stopped the Italian Grand Prix, and here's a look at what happened. At the center of your picture, the white car of Max Papis gets it sideways.
Well, he looked like he hit the back wheel of the car in front, spun him round, and he actually came out of the Ascari curve backwards, which is pretty nasty, and of course several of them did afterwards. Remember, they're on pretty cold tyres. They've only done one lap. They've come around a long, fast bit of circuit, and of course anything can happen. Plus, there was a lot of dust there from the previous incident on the warming up lap. So anything, if they went slightly offline, they were going to have a major problem keeping it under control.
If you are joining us, David Coulthard started from pole position, threw the car off the racetrack at the Ascari chicane on the warm-up lap. And that spread gravel everywhere, but I don't think gravel contributed to this. Papis, I think, just locked him up and spun, followed by Andrea Montermini, who hit Papis, then backed it into the wall. And he may not have a backup car. The Pacific team is modestly funded. It remains to be seen whether he will have a car to get back onto the grid. Now, there you see him reforming. We will get set for a complete restart. The full 53 laps of this circuit, which now measures just under 3.6 miles in length following the modifications to the Curva Grande, the Lesmo corners, and several other spots around the racetrack.
Do we assume that Coulthard has to go around and do a lap to get on the grid, or can they?
Less so. From overhead now, here's a look at the field streaming through those opening chicanes.
Yeah, I mean, you can see everybody was very, very good. They obviously were so aware that that's where all the incidents happen, and they let it all fall to pieces when they got to the Ascari curves. But they kept it very, very nice and neat through there, and of course it allowed the thing just to string out nice and neatly, and everybody got going. And we saw, obviously, the two Ferraris chasing Schumacher very, very heavily.
There's been so much triumph at this racetrack over the years, and a great deal of tragedy. The Ascari chicane is named for the late Alberto Ascari, a Formula One champion who died in a testing accident there in 1955. You're looking at Jean Alesi. The crowd will go wild at the mere sight of their hero, who will move to Benetton next year with his teammate Gerhard Berger. About time to put the gloves back on and strap back into the cars. We'll take a quick commercial break and be back with live coverage of the restart here at Monza. We are back at Monza, Italy. No, this is not the restart. This is an Italian television replay of the initial start of this Italian Grand Prix. We are still under a red flag. Silly me, I thought it would take less than a half an hour to get our race restarted. Michael Schumacher in battle with the Ferraris down to the first chicane.
Very nicely performed through there. He just eased through. He had Ferraris either side of him, snicked in front with the stronger braking. He's got some new brakes on his car this weekend, followed by the Ferraris, and everybody got through there in very, very strict form. Very neat, very nice and tidy. And there they are, through the Curva Grande, streaming out. There you see one of the Marlboro McLarens, and of course round up into the Lesmos.
David Coulthard took his car off the racetrack on the warm-up lap, did not start from his pole position for this first attempted start of the race. But he has made his way around and will take pole position for the restart. Michael Schumacher loses a great getaway. As you see Alesi and Berger following. The Ferraris using new engines that rev, we are told, to 18,000 RPM.
But of course, they haven't always been that reliable, so let's hope they don't go off like grenades today. Because one always wants to see a Ferrari win anyway, but to see one win at Monza is very special. And I'm sure with these two guys really having their last ever Grand Prix for Ferrari at Monza, it's something they'd really love to do. Despite the fact there's probably bad feeling amongst them, they still want to win for their fans. There's something unique about the fans in Italy, and there's nothing like it anywhere else in the world. And when you're a Ferrari driver, those fans are for life, wherever you go.
This is a replay of the incident that brought our race to a stop. There's Andrea Montermini in the Pacific. Remains to be seen if he's going to make the starting grid. There is Massimiliano Papis in the white car, the footwork on the left, on the right. It's in the 90s. Now, I suspect Montermini is shaking his head because he does not have a backup car and will not be a part of this race.
And that is, really is a breaker for Pacific, because they really need to be out there trying to scratch up points wherever they go. I don't know how they survive from race to race. I really don't know. But I know they get a lot of support. Bernie Eccleston helps a lot of the smaller teams to keep them there, to give them that encouragement.
Another look at the initial start. As you can see, the front was fairly slow to get away. Eddie Irvine way over there on the left in the Jordan-Peugeot. They are revving to about 16,700 RPM with those V10 engines. Michael Schumacher, once he did get underway, was able to rocket forward. Johnny Herbert got away to a great start. That's him you see locking up the brakes there at the first chicane. Coming from as far back as he did, he was going at a pretty good old clip by the time they reached that chicane. By the way, in the morning warm-up before the race began, as you see the Pacific coming in with the back deranged, among the quick cars, all the usual heavy hitters. Jean Alesi quickest, David Coulthard second, Gerhard Berger third, followed by Schumacher and Hill. Damon Hill has been making confident noises all weekend, despite the fact that he's not been at the top of the timesheets at any point. Among those who did not do well in the morning warm-up, Johnny Herbert was 11th quick, Eddie Irvine 14th, and Jules Boullion in the Sauber-Ford 17th.
These warm-up times, everybody gets very paranoid about them. I don't think it's quite so necessary. I mean, a lot of these guys are trying something that yesterday they thought, if I try that, it might just improve the car. And they try something and it doesn't work. So they then go back to the setup that worked yesterday. Everybody puts a lot more sort of importance into these warm-up times. It's lovely when you are quickest, because it means whatever you thought that didn't work yesterday did work today. And for Alesi to be on the front row or fastest this morning obviously was a great fillip for him. And it gives him the confidence, because he hasn't had that good a weekend. To be teammates next year, so they got to keep nice to each other.
There is Jean Alesi, who says he expects no problem whatsoever. Gerhard Berger, for his part, says he's delighted to be Alesi's teammate next year at Benetton. There you see Jules Boullion, who had a new seat made this from the 5-minute board as we get set to attempt to restart the Italian Grand Prix from Monza.
Yes, okay.
Whenever we finally get this race in, you can expect to see highlights of it tonight on RPM Tonight, the most comprehensive racing show on television. We'll also have the final IndyCar race of the season from Laguna Seca, Saturday night's NASCAR race from Richmond, Virginia, and of course today's event here at Monza with Kenny, the main man of motorsport. RPM Tonight at 8 p.m. only on ESPN2. There you see Jules Boullion, one of several drivers who will start backup cars in this race. There is Michael Schumacher on the outside of the front row. David Coulthard is on pole in his backup. So is Jules Boullion back in the number 14 spot. In the 15 hole, Max Papis is in his backup. And Pedro Diniz is in his backup car in the number 23 spot. In case you're wondering, the exchange rate for Italian lira is 1,600 to the dollar, which means that Michael Schumacher's first Ferrari contract next year at 25 million US is worth 40 billion lira.
That buys a lot of tokens for the telephone, doesn't it, in Italy? Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that start just now, how much power the Ferraris had. It's rumoured that they have actually more power than anybody else. Nobody's sure about this, but you saw both those Ferraris actually steam alongside Schumacher at the start, and he didn't know quite which one to hit off first, and he decided it was probably better under this probationary period he's under, probably not to take anybody off at all. But he really steamed up on him. And it's going, I think next season with him in that Ferrari is going to be intriguing as to whether he has the development capabilities to actually make that car work better. Because I still think Berger is a very good test driver. He's very experienced, but no doubt time will tell.
There is Rubens Barrichello. Depending on who you talk to, he will either be with the Jordan team or the Ferrari team next year. In fact, the rumor is Barrichello wants so badly to be the number 2 to Schumacher at Ferrari that he has offered to drive for no salary, choosing to make his income from his personal sponsors, and they are legion. But he has told Ferrari reportedly that he will drive for nothing to be in the Ferrari next year.
But Barrichello apparently isn't at all happy about what Schumacher said, and that was that Barrichello doesn't know how to sort out a car. So he said, well, I've done pretty well with the car I'm in now, but that doesn't really bode very well for a relationship to start with, where it seems that Coulthard and Schumacher have a great rapport at this time.
Schumacher also said Barrichello hasn't driven for a top team, which I'm sure came as news to Eddie Jordan.
Yes, I'm sure Eddie had a few Irish expletives there. But, you know, one's got to admit that Schumacher certainly has tremendous skills, and we've seen that at Spa last week and in other races this year. But he does need a very strong backup driver because he cannot do all the development work.
What do you care, really, if he can set the car up or not?
Of course, it gets down to individual styles, too. Although the computers tell you absolutely everything, I don't think they can't tell you what one driver wants out of it. One driver reads one thing into his driving, and he...
That this means fewer commercial breaks during the actual racing, so you gotta love it. Stay with us. Formula One races and several visits by USAC Indy cars to this great circuit. You ride with Michael Schumacher. Don't pass the pole sitter, Michael. We went through that at Silverstone last year. David Coulthard has made it through the Ascari chicane. being given a reprieve when he went off at that point before the initial start of this race, but we had a red flag on lap 2 when several cars spun out at the same point. Coulthard reported there was oil on the track. Hopefully that has now been cleared as the field makes its way around, minus the 2 cars of Andrea Montermini and Roberto Moreno, and we will get set to restart. There to the right of your screen, you see some of the old banking, last used back around 1960. Any of you who watched the movie Grand Prix, you have seen the Monza banking in action. They filmed it on that banking. And boy, it used to work the suspensions and tires.
Really was very, 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 very rough.
So now the field comes round to the set position. We'll have the green flag at the back, then the red light, and then the green. The final 2 cars pulling into position. Pedro Diniz in his backup, and Gianni Lavaggi, Johnny Car Wash, in his last appearance in Formula One for 1995. The green flag waves. We have the red light. Here we go again. Once again, the Ferraris with a great smoky tire start. Schumacher and Berger go wheel to wheel, but Coulthard will have the lead. Oh, and everybody gets sideways.
That was a nasty thing there. I thought there would be multiple shunts, but so far they've fed their way through there. Remarkable. Berger had a lot of problem in practice on Friday, and this might be something still to do with it, locking up wheels.
Berger won a game of chicken with Michael Schumacher as they went through that chicane, and now they head for the Lesmos once again.
Coulthard got a little bit of a gap there, which is very nice because the other 2 having such a moment behind him. Hill is very quiet at the moment, but I'm sure we'll see something soon. Who said the Ferrari hadn't got any power?
Coulthard drifts across Berger's bow. Berger looking for the race lead. If he gets it, this place will go crazy.
He'll get it down that back straight out of the Ascari curve, that's for sure. There's so much speed down there. It's so great to go to a circuit where there are places to overtake. The drivers love it. They all feel this circuit is much safer than it was before, but it's still very fast. But nobody wants to go off because you can still get hurt. But it's not as clinical as some of these other places we've seen.
Coulthard, Berger, Schumacher, Hill, Herbert, and Alesi quite a ways back.
Oh, Berger's not making too much impression on the Williams at the moment. Slipstreaming down there, but catches him under braking, sweeping in 100-mile-an-hour entry and 160-mile-an-hour exit of this parabolic turn. Very, very fast, and then speeding up to 215 just after the start-finish line. The fastest track.
So David Coulthard makes the most of his opportunity and leads the first lap, followed by Berger, Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, and Herbert. Berger took a look down the outside, heading for the chicane. This is the chicane where Ayrton Senna went off back in 1988, handing the race victory to the 2 Ferraris of Berger and Alboreto.
This is the Curva Grande, well, it used to be the most exciting corner in motor racing. Now it looks still pretty exciting to take that at 180 miles an hour by anybody's standards. But Schumacher playing a nice, sensible game there. He likes to watch, see the race settle down before he makes his move. He's very wise. He can see Berger in front of him, locking up brakes, diving inside Coulthard. And, he knows he's got time. They're going to have stops. His pit work, his pit strategy is always superior to anybody else's. And so if he doesn't take the lead yet, it doesn't really bother him. He's really very, very bright.
Well, we've got more dust. I believe that's
very slow.
At Ascari again. I think that might have been Mika Salo going slowly. Nevertheless, up front, Coulthard now beginning to draw away just a little bit. Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, Johnny Herbert, and it might have been Rubens Barrichello, I think. It looked like one of the Jordans.
I expected to see a bit more from a McLaren at the moment, but maybe they've decided it's time to take it easy.
Ooh, here's the problem. One of the Ligers, that's Papis getting off. And is that Mika Salo who spun the Tyrrell? Looks like everybody got by cleanly.
But he kept the engine going and carried on, which is great. Ken Tyrrell will be very happy about that.
The Tyrrell team has been working very hard on their suspension. The car just simply is not balanced, and that's a problem. Ooh, we saw some evil-looking dicing right there. Let's take another look at the restart while the battle cools up front slightly. At the lower right is Coulthard. Watch just behind him as Gerhard Berger gets away in a cloud of smoke, gets right over to Michael Schumacher's hubs, and then it is simply a battle between those two. Schumacher lights him up, Berger twitching under braking. Great stuff.
Yeah, because in fact we have Schumacher with a different type of brake out there, a higher standard braking system than he's had before. So maybe I noticed they were working on the brakes just before the race started. So maybe that's why he had a little bit of problems there, because he can adjust them, of course.
David Coulthard was asked this weekend if he if he jumped or was pushed from the Williams team, whether he knew where he was driving next year for another team before it was announced that Jacques Villeneuve would come to be Damon Hill's partner in the Williams team next year. Coulthard said, "I can only answer that question when my future plans are announced," which of course leads everyone to believe that those plans are already set in stone. Ron Dennis said his driver lineup has been locked up for some time now. They will announce it at the European Grand Prix on October 1st, at which point Ferrari says they will announce their second driver. So depending on whom you believe, David Coulthard will be a McLaren driver in 1996. However, as mentioned, Ron Dennis says his driver lineup is already decided. Alain Prost, who is now testing for that team, says he doesn't know what he's going to do next year. So, take your pick.
I don't know if you believe anybody, really. Coulthard is getting a little bit of a lead here. He's pulling away very gently. He's being very neat, very smooth through those corners. You notice that they do curb it a lot in the very first chicane, but after that, they keep it very neat and tidy, try not to ride those curbs. And of course, they are pulling a lot of speed. Here, they're pulling 130 miles an hour.
You have to be very careful of those curves. In the Ascari chicane, the curves were made horizontal simply because the cars tend to use them so much. So essentially, the cars have been given that little extra bit of runoff at Ascari. Now here comes Coulthard with so much to prove. Same goes for this man, Gerhard Berger, who said his biggest motivation for going to Benetton was that he doesn't think that Ferrari's new V10 next year will be reliable. He says it will be powerful, but he's not sure of its reliability. And at age 36, he wants to win races. So he will no doubt take a pay cut and go to Benetton to have that Renault behind his head.
Basically, he just didn't want to drive with Schumacher. That's the truth of it. He's used to this great status he has with Ferrari, and suddenly Schumacher is going to dominate anybody that comes along, and it's going to give them a hard time. And if Coulthard goes to Ferrari, it'd be wonderful for him. At the same time, he's going to have a major character change to get himself to get in front of Schumacher, personality-wise and, of course, driving-wise.
Well, driving with Schumacher has been the kiss of death for just about everyone's career that has chosen to come alongside him. Actually, he and Martin Brundle, his old Benetton teammate, get on very well, and yet Brundle is hardly mentioned in the frame as a possible teammate at Ferrari. Rushing now through the haze, temperature about 89 degrees, a warm afternoon in Monza. Gerhard Berger, fast lap. He's going to need several of those if he's going to come to terms with Coulthard once more through the second Lesmo. After a short break, we'll return for more live coverage of round 12 of the 1995 Formula One season.
Schumacher just whipped in the quickest lap there, which is interesting to know. Shows he's getting himself together. But, you know, I've noticed with several Grand Prix, they're inclined to run fairly like this for a while until we have a fuel stop. And once we get that fuel stop, then they think they really know what the order is. Because, oh!
The other Pacific, Gianni Lavaggi. This is in the chicanes on the front side, I believe. And it looks like he has lost the fire and is done for the day. Meanwhile, rushing down toward the Parabolica, 209 miles an hour before getting on the brakes right here. We're back in 1970 in Saturday qualifying. Jochen Rindt Lotus jerked left into the barrier, which you see to the right of your screen. He died of his injuries and became the first posthumously crowned world champion. In fact, the only one. Dying at the age of 28. In fact, recently Austrian TV showed footage of that crash, which I did not know, frankly, existed. I had never seen footage of it, but apparently it exists, and they showed it recently. The 25th anniversary of that dark moment in Formula One history. Now here's Blundell battling with fellow Englishman Martin Brundle. Well, Italian TV has decided not to show us the denouement of that little battle. Ooh, somebody getting a wheel off.
Mr. Lazy.
Coulthard beginning to draw away. Berger and the world champion. Damon Hill now drawing up on Michael Schumacher. Our pictures and sound are coming to us from RAI Network in Italy. Now David Coulthard draws away. Gerhard Berger has had an interesting 2 weeks since our race in Spa. He recently married his longtime girlfriend, Ana Corvo, from Portugal, mother of his now teenage daughter, Cristina. Berger had a great comment. He said, "We didn't want to make a public event of it like someone else," referring obviously to Michael Schumacher's chaotic wedding to his longtime girlfriend just a few weeks earlier.
Damon's right up on the back there of Schumacher, and yet Schumacher was closing a little bit on the Ferrari just now. Lazy's scratching away at the back, trying to hold in at all. For some reason, he's not really on it today. His heart really hasn't been in it this weekend. He hasn't been doing anything particularly well. I mean, I would have thought fifth was quite a good qualifying position, but I know he wasn't happy. There you can see that Blundell did get him back by Brundle, and of course somebody else has got by Blundell as well, coming in there.
That was Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber going around Martin Brundle. Brundle said he has not driven this Ligier in its low downforce configuration. Recall that Aguri Suzuki of Japan had the car for the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, so Brundle has had to accommodate a steep learning curve. We've had a lot of cars off the racetrack as these teams try to find the absolute minimum amount of wing necessary to provide the downforce they need for the corners. The idea here at Monza is top speed. Coulthard's pole lap averaging 152 miles an hour is the fastest of the year, not quite as fast as the old Monza record, and of course not close to the all-time qualifying record of 160 miles an hour for Keke Rosberg at the old Silverstone circuit.
You can see how little downforce they're running, when in fact you can't see the names of the sponsors on the rear wings of the car when they're coming towards you. That tells you how low the wings are.
Schumacher and Hill may find themselves in a battle shortly.
For a change. We don't often have that, do we? It should be worth another one race ban or something.
By talking before the race, you were fairly confident that Michael Schumacher did absolutely nothing wrong at Spa.
I wouldn't say nothing wrong. I didn't think he did anything too outrageous. I think his driving was outstanding. I thought the way that Damon could not get away with him, Schumacher on slicks, Damon on wets, and Damon couldn't pull away from him. I thought that was the outrageous thing. And for a guy on wets to allow another man on slicks to actually stay with him through a series of corners, I found quite difficult. I know, I'm sure I wasn't in the car, and therefore, how can I say? But that was my opinion at the time, and I thought Michael did an amazing job. I think you saw some real star driving going on that we don't see very often. You won't really see that sort of thing today.
And supposedly Michael Schumacher is worth about a second a lap in the Ferrari next year. He may need all of that and then some. The running order right now is Coulthard, Berger, Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, Barrichello, Häkkinen, Herbert, Irvine, Blundell, Brundle, Frentzen, Penny, Katayama, Badois, and Salo.
It's the one racetrack, I think, of all that we've been to that the Williams with the Renault engine really is superior. Then somebody's going to say, yes, but surely Benetton have got the Renault engine as well, but they don't seem to have that aerodynamic speed that the Williams does. And it's very apparent. You can see just the way Coulthard is gradually pulling away from the rest of the field. He's now got a 2.5 second lead after, 6 laps. So he's just gradually easing away from everybody. But I think after his incident on the warming up lap, it's quite remarkable how he's pulled himself together, because I'd have been a bit perturbed, I think, after falling off in the lap.
Now here's another look at the spin that took Gianni Lavaggi out of this race. And as you can see, that gravel pouring over onto that chicane, that'll make life difficult for the field that remains in this race. In fact, that gravel was a part of a bizarre incident that took place on Friday when Taki Inoue went off in the footwork, scattered gravel everywhere, and then the 240 teammates came through, and Pedro Diniz sprayed the gravel in the air. It was hit at full speed by his teammate following, Roberto Moreno. It absolutely destroyed the front wing, the nose, the rear wing, and pocked Moreno's helmet to the point where he could not use it. Left rear tire down on one of the Ligers.
Doesn't look good, does it? Can't quite see what it is, but it's certainly going down, but he seemed to be going still quite far. It really has gone.
Martin Brundle. Oh, what a shame. You see the sidewall has come completely adrift.
That's amazing to happen so soon in the race. He must have picked up some rubbish. There was debris around, no doubt, from that incident at the Ascari curve, and he might have picked up something from that.
Or perhaps had contact with someone. There is Schumacher with Damon Hill just behind him. Hill desperately needs to get by, trailing Schumacher by 15 points for the World Championship, and the rear end stepped out right there on the Williams. Martin Brundle, one of 3 drivers represented by an Englishman named Mike Greasley. Greasley suffered a stroke recently, so representation of those 3 drivers, including Brundle, Mika Salo, and Eddie Irvine, has been taken over by Formula One's heaviest hitter, Bernie Ecclestone, which no doubt has the team managers of those particular teams shaking in their boots. There is Brundle. Now he is beginning to spread debris everywhere.
Yeah. There's pieces of fiberglass and carbon fiber all over the place.
Ooh.
But he's not pulled over. He's just still driving back. He's certainly driving back. I can't believe why he's doing that, apart from the fact he daren't go over the fence and walk back through the crowds. Is the only thing I can think. But he's certainly not doing the suspension any good, because it really will be dragging on the round now.
Looked like a piece of the diffuser might have come off. Coulthard still leads away. A year ago, David Coulthard had a podium in his future at that race, but he ran out of fuel. 5 a.m. Eastern Time, live here on ESPN. Here comes Pedro Diniz in the bright yellow 40. Just behind him, Mika Salo, who just pitted the Tyrrell for fuel and tires with 40 laps remaining. We anticipated just 1 stop. Obviously, Salo will have to make more than 1. Oh, and there goes David Coulthard spinning out of the lead.
Oh, no, he's keeping his foot in it. He's got to keep it going. He's keeping it going. Somehow he's got to keep that thing. He's got it straight towards the exit, which is the main thing. He'll be out of it now.
Oh, he's got a long way to go.
Lost a lot of time.
And it appears he will escape the gravel.
I tell you, it's so precarious, those brakes. They come in on the brakes, then zap, it's gone, isn't it? Just as quick as that. He had a little bit too much braking on the rear. It's so difficult to adjust these cars. They're so rigid. To adjust the brakes so that at 180 mile an hour corner, the brake bias is correct, as opposed to a corner at 110 miles an hour.
And that is the same place that he went off on the warm-up lap of the original start of this race.
They won't be happy in Scotland about that.
Or in the Williams pit. But in the grandstand here at Monza, they are absolutely overjoyed because Ferrari leads Gerhard Berger.
I'd love to hear a crowd if we didn't have all this stuff on our head.
Recall the race in 1988 when Berger picked up the surprise victory. It's a little early to declare him the winner. When Ayrton Senna spun in this corner. Schumacher and Hill just behind. I don't know if the wounds of Senna's passing are too recent to make light. And if you feel that way, then I apologize. But the story goes that Senna was welcomed to heaven by God himself, who asked if Senna had any questions. Senna said, well, only in 1988, when Enzo Ferrari passed away and I was leading the Ferraris in the race, and I asked for a sign as to whether I should try to pass Schlesser in the Williams, and you told me I should, and I crashed out of the race. Why did you tell me to pass Schlesser? God said, I don't know. Enzo, why'd we tell him to pass Schlesser?
Here comes Coulthard into the pits. They got a new nose for him because he obviously damaged the other one, or possibly damaged the other one. Fresh tyres and, of course, refueling.
Oh, looks like he
overshot his pit. That was not a good move. He came in far too fast. Very difficult to judge when you're rambling around at 215 miles an hour the whole time. But they dragged him back. They're whipping the wheel off. They're checking something at the front and probably taking that nose section off. Can't see from here. Getting all the dirt out of the discs. And I guess they're going to change the front nose and get him out on the track. But, of course, that means he's going to have a 2-stop race, whatever happens at this stage.
And they're looking very carefully. Oh, and Coulthard shuts it down and gets out.
He's filled the inlets up with stones.
Problems at the front end. Perhaps brake discs irreparably damaged by stones. In any event, the young Scot faces another heartbreak at Monza. Meanwhile, on the track, Gerhard Berger leads Schumacher and Hill.
You don't get many opportunities like that. It'll be half a second quicker than everybody both days, ahead of the world champion. All the talk about him going to Ferrari and then to lose it in the race, right? It might have been a mechanical problem, but to me it was he just overbraked and went off the road. It was from the rear end he had a problem, but of course picked up the damage in the sand, and that's what did the damage. But it's great. Look at that Ferrari out in front. And I just can imagine the noise that must be going on. It must be outrageous to go around, and you will see those red flags when you're in that car, without a doubt. And I reckon to drive a Ferrari at Monza is worth half a second a lap, and that's really what we're seeing here. is seeing Berger actually starting to ease away a little bit because of his sort of the emotion of the whole situation.
Ukyo Katayama, the other Tyrrell, making an early pit stop. Now we'll take another look at what happened to David Coulthard heading for the Ascari chicane.
Yeah, he just locked up the rear end. I mean, that's all he did. You can't say it was bumpy. That circuit was as smooth as a baby's bottom. And he went straight round onto the sand, and of course that was it, and damaged the car. Here we have Berger whistling out to overtake Pani, is it?
That's Pedro Diniz.
Pedro Diniz. Yeah, I'm not quite used to the colours of these cars being to change every race.
Well, that's okay. You're a relief pitcher this weekend. You're allowed a few.
I never look that far back down the grid. That's my problem. I look at the guys at the front.
Diniz would appreciate
it. Yeah, I'm sure he would, but he's got to be realistic. He's back there for a reason.
Absolutely. Right now, he's between the two title contenders. Schumacher and Hill make short work of him. This is where his teammate went off.
Schumacher and Hill have actually eased up quite a bit on him through there, but of course he is picking up the tail enders first. It's the first time the back markers have actually seen the leaders of the race coming around. They're not got in the swing of moving over yet, and we can see that here. Obviously a little bit of drafting, a bit of slipstreaming goes on. That's just what Berger needs, a couple of extra miles an hour. Even then he's finding it difficult to go past, because a lot of these guys are running less downforce than the Bergers, but of course it means they're slower in the corner.
Look at all the gravel offline at the Ascari chicane. You have to tippy-toe through there. Riding with Damon Hill.
Yeah. How many revs are you doing, Bob? Did you catch that?
I lost count at around 15,000.
Schumacher's trying to break his toe. Look at Damon right up the back of Schumacher going into that corner. See, Schuey wanted to get by that car in front but couldn't. And he actually wasn't close enough, but he really tried to break Damon's toe. Slipstreaming, drafting is the most amazing feeling. You sit there, seeing the guy behind, gradually creeping up on you, and then just when you're going, no, you can't do it, zap, he goes by. Schumacher goes by, but Hill doesn't.
Oh.
Whoa! That was
Hill.
Really something else, but Hill, fortunately, his braking balance was about right. Otherwise, he'd have lost it in the same way that Coulthard did earlier. He just braked, kept it under control, and went through the corner, really without losing anything to Schumacher at all. That was a pretty clever bit of driving.
I imagine the old ticker is clicking away there for Damon Hill. That was very close.
I don't think he's thinking about probation at this moment. Do you, Bob? I don't think there's anything there in Schumacher's mind. He's just going to hold Hill off just as much as he can with any trick in the book, but he might not weave just as many times as he did at Spa.
Absolutely. A world champion like Schumacher is not thinking about that suspended suspension for 4 races as a result of the steward's decision 2 weeks ago in Spa. Once more through the gravel.
Alesi slightly moving up there, picking up a little time, but if you remember, of course, the lads in front have had some moments with tail markers, whereas by the time Alesi got there, they might have said, okay, I'll give in, I'll pull over. And Alesi is a pretty brave overtaker too.
No question about it. The drivers in the points right now: Berger, Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, Barrichello, and Häkkinen. Häkkinen, of course, in the McLaren-Mercedes. Alain Prost, after his brief test last week, said he was surprised at how good the car is and that it will not take long to develop it into a front-runner once again. Now, I wonder how much of that might have been a politically motivated comment from one of the master politicians of Formula One, but nevertheless, Alain Prost making news for McLaren as you ride with Damon Hill.
It might make Prost quite a bit of money as well, so he's got to say the right things. And I mean, in my own small way, being a lot older than him, I would still love to race cars full time. He has realized that there's really nothing in out there when you're not racing, and he wants to get back in desperately. So he's feeding his way in to see how competitive he is. I'm a bit worried. I don't think he did that good a job versus Damon Hill. And I don't think that, he's really got what it takes to beat the Häkkinens. I think as a test driver and as technically he's brilliant, intelligently he's right at the best. He's one of the best. But I think as far as actually having the guts that you need, the Schumachers and the Häkkinens and the Alesis, their sort of drive, I don't think Prost has got it. And you have to have it to win these sort of races, unless you're in a superior car, which he is not going to be if he drives the McLaren-Mercedes.
Well, the man said it himself. Prost said, I will not do it if it's not a 100% possibility of scoring. Preliminary word from the Williams pit is that a wheel bearing failure sidelined poleman and race leader David Coulthard. We'll take a timeout and return for more live from the Grand Prix of Italy at historic Monza. Stay with us. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the Italian Grand Prix from Monza, is brought to you by Toyota and their full line of quality cars and trucks. Toyota, I love what you do for me. And by American Express. Welcome back live to Monza, where Gerhard Berger leads Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, Jean Alesi, Rubens Barrichello, and Mika Häkkinen in the 6 points-paying positions of this Italian Grand Prix. Bob Varsha and Derek Bell, glad to have you with us on this Sunday morning. Morning in America, afternoon at Monza, where a crowd of between 75,000 and 100,000 of the Tifosi, the legendary Ferrari fans, are watching their man, Gerhard Berger, out front.
Berger on his last run at Monza, which, as I say, must be very emotional for him, but he's out there giving it his all. And I think that's what's great. You read all this nonsense about bad feeling and bad vibes within a team, and there you have a fella goes out, he knows he's going to another team, and he goes out because he's a racer. And that's what I say about these drivers. All this nonsense, the politics behind the scenes. If only drivers could get in and literally just drive. That's all they want to do, is drive. They don't want all the politics. And you're seeing these guys get out there, Berger's out there, and he's driving his heart out because he is a racer. All he wants to do is win. He doesn't give a darn about where he's going next year, who's this, who's that, all the politics. He just wants to win.
Comparing laps for Berger out front, Schumacher in second. It's true that much of what we hear in Formula One is highly charged politically. Everybody has an agenda that they want to accomplish, and of course it's all filtered through the media, and that includes us. We try to bring you the most accurate information we can get, but you just can't quite be sure whether what you're getting is accurate. Oh, is that Martin Brundle? No, I believe that was Olivier Panis parked in the chicane.
Wasn't Martin's helmet.
Yeah, that was Panis. At that point on the racetrack, Schumacher and Hill come flashing through.
It just shows how difficult it is for some of these guys. They're losing it under braking coming in. They obviously, as you know, have little downforce, and they come in that last split second. If they leave it a split second late, the car goes round on them.
Meanwhile, Martin Brundle has his Ligier in the pits. Mugen Honda engines again for 1996, we are told. Well, the rumor has it that Honda's in-house effort, you might know that engineers at Honda have been working on their own time building a Formula One chassis and engine combination. It has tested on and off for the last year or two. It is still pounding around at Suzuka, and the rumor has it that Honda may come back as a manufacturer in 1998.
Alesi's moving up very, very close to Damon Hill at the moment. He's just picked his way back up with the last couple of laps, moving in on them very well. They haven't really either. They haven't pulled away much from Barrichello and Häkkinen and Herbert, who are not far behind. In that last shot, we picked them up just behind them. So they're all still fairly close together. I mean, just a couple of seconds in it at this time.
Damon Hill closing up inexorably on the world champion, Michael Schumacher, who for his part says he has been driving his car at the limit and over it all weekend. He said he has never had as much trouble and taken as much time finding the optimum balance in the Benetton-Renault.
Alesi's right there, right on their tail. And that'll lighten things up a bit, because then Hill will have to, watch his tail, because Alesi's going to come through, and we know how good Alesi is at that sort of maneuver.
Schumacher, Hill, and Alesi in Rogia. Just over all that signage on the left is the street on the other side of a concrete wall. You can stand out there, listen to the cars come by, and tell which car it is going by just by the engine note. Of course, the easiest to pick out, the scream of the 18,000 RPM Ferrari V12.
Why do Ferraris always have such a wonderful note? Everything they do in their road cars, they always sound just a little bit better. There's something special about a Ferrari. But it's a legend. There's a car that's been out there for all these years, racing all the time. They get a lot of criticism about their performance, Ferrari, but they make a lot of that car in Modena. 95% of that car is built in Italy. I know they got a British designer and one thing or another, but that car is built in Italy. They don't have Renault engines. They don't have Mugen Honda engines. It's all Ferrari, and for that I really have to take my hat off.
They have missed a mere handful of races in the history of Formula One. No question.
This is all very interesting. We're going to see what poor Michael's got to weave his way through here. Damon behind, followed by Alesi. All three have got by that tail ender.
It was Jules Boullion in the Sauber. Ooh, Now we have more slower traffic ahead, and the queue is building up behind the footwork. Schumacher will take him on the outside. What will Damon Hill do? There is Berger twitching just that little bit. And now the footwork gets out. Oh, and Hill and Schumacher have touched again.
All because of that tail end of Hill and Schumacher, but that is unbelievable. Why do they keep doing it? I mean, no wonder they can't talk. Ferrari's first and second at this point.
And Schumacher is coming over to have an immediate word with his title rival. Oh, an Italian TV chooses to go to the grandstands. They are delighted. It will now be a Ferrari 1-2, but Schumacher came over, and I don't think his first words were,
"Are you all right?"
Yes. That'll do. Here's another look. Hill, following Schumacher, tries to squeeze by to the left and boots him up the gearbox.
I don't think he tried to squeeze by. He could not stop. He tucked back in behind that tail marker, could not stop, and tried to go to the left to miss him. He tried to miss him on the left and couldn't make it. Boy, oh boy. They certainly have some moments, these two. It's unbelievable.
And a big cheer for Michael Schumacher. It's not been that way all weekend for him, but I think you could tell by the look on his face, he is absolutely furious with Damon Hill. Now, ride with Hill. I thought he was going to try to duck up once he got past. See, now the footwork dodges left.
To let him by.
Right.
And he locks it up and then think that's too much. Do you remember? I remember Senna doing that a couple of years ago.
Yep,
the same thing.
Booted Martin Brundle.
Yeah.
That is a highlight that you will see time and again.
Particularly if Hill loses the World Championship.
Oh, my. You'll certainly see it on RPM tonight on ESPN2. So, Forza Ferrari, first and second. Berger and Alesi with pit stops in their future. Rubens Barrichello, as you see, is now on the podium provisionally, with Häkkinen, Herbert, and Irvine now in the points. Mark Blundell follows, then Frentzen, Badouar, Papis, Inoue, Boullion, Salo, Katayama, Denitz, and there is Frank Williams.
I can't imagine what he's looking at. There's nothing to look at anymore. He's got no cars out there. Yeah, he can go home.
Oh, what a year for Williams.
7 seconds over Alesi. Fuel stops to come. That'll make it a bit more interesting, and then we just hope this Ferrari engine can hold together. Now they're going to try and drag the Rothman's car out of the pit. Here comes the first Ferrari in for a pit stop.
This is Gerhard Berger, the race leader. Fuel goes in. We anticipate this will be his only stop of the race. It's happening on lap number 24.
Sorry. I was going to say that puts Alesi into lead. Quite a long stop, but you've got to be secure. And of course, one must remember they're putting a lot of fuel in. They're putting a complete tank in for the balance of the race, not a short fill. So that's why you're not getting these 8 or 9 second stops, I assume. There's Alesi in the lead. I bet he can't quite believe his luck, but he'll be going in, I guess, next time to refuel and change tires.
His Japanese girlfriend, Kimiko, is here. They are quite the item in Formula One social circles. He has been very touchy this weekend, has Jean Alesi, about the issue of his ability to set up a car. When asked by a reporter how he evaluated his own technical skills, he looked him in the eye, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Why do you ask?" Now, what happened here? Did Gerhard Berger run afoul of someone?
He came in on brand new tires, came in the corner, and couldn't really get on the power too well. Didn't get by the guy, and I guess he just lost a bit of time straightening himself out. Now he's just ahead of Blundell, isn't he, there?
Mark Blundell. That's one of the Jordans out in front of him, Rubens Barrichello. And the McLaren at this point.
So Berger's actually just got ahead of Blundell. That's probably what some of the fusses are at. Now Blundell's getting back by him again.
Raising the dust as he goes offline. Mark Blundell looking very racy. Of course, Berger has a full load of fuel in addition to those cool tires. Now Alesi makes his stop. As you see, Luca Badouar has the Minardi in the pits as well. Minardi's deal for V12 Ferrari engines next year, by the way, has fallen through. They're talking with Ford about possible customer engines, perhaps the Z-Tech engines that the Sauber team will give up next year. Now Blundell dives for the pit entrance. And that will put Rubens Barrichello into the lead. Now here is the incident we just saw the tail end of before, as Barrichello went by Gerhard Berger, and it was neatly done.
Yeah, well, obviously Berger wasn't going to make it be stupid there. We'd seen too many cars off there so far, and he knew he was on brand new tires and they weren't hot, so he had to just be very cool and let the guy go. He didn't want to, because it means he's got to retake him again later on. But here we are. He is out there again and no doubt steaming on, and he'll get him in no time at all.
In the final year of his contract, Rubens Barrichello, as I mentioned earlier, wants to drive for Ferrari. May be running out the string with the Jordan team, for whom he has shown so much promise. There you see him twitching just that little bit under braking. Mika Häkkinen now runs second, Johnny Herbert third. Gerhard Berger, despite his pit stop, is up into fourth, followed by Eddie Irvine. Mark Blundell shown fifth. Jean Alesi in the sixth spot. Into the Parabolica goes the race leader. We'll be back to Monza live in just a moment. We are back while Italian television is showing us this replay of Luca Badoer's second major crash this weekend at Monza. He is now out of the race. Race leader Mika Häkkinen is in the McLaren-Mercedes.
That apparently lets Eddie Irvine into the lead, but of course he hasn't pitted either. Alesi got out of the pits ahead of Berger, so that puts Alesi basically in the lead. Herbert's in the lead, but in fact that's not going to last long because he's got to pit for fuel in a moment. But in reality it's going to be Alesi, Berger, and so on. As you see, Eddie Irvine is now in the pits from the second position in the race, as our timing and scoring is about a lap behind the action. It is Herbert now leading, Alesi second. You're right, Derek. He got out ahead of Gerhard Berger. Berger now runs third as you watch Johnny Herbert, the race leader, in his last few efforts for the Benetton team. I mentioned earlier that Herbert had some hard things to say about his teammate. He told the British Autosport magazine last week that Schumacher is the most selfish driver he has ever shared a team with, that he has his own setup, he keeps that information to himself, that in a 4-day test when each driver is supposed to get 2 days of testing, Schumacher will come up with something consistently that he thinks needs his attention for another day and a half or so, leaving Herbert no time in the car. And that jives with stories we've heard about team debriefs with the drivers together and then team debriefs with Schumacher alone. So Herbert with very hard words. We saw them playing ping pong at the top of the show, but you can imagine there are not a lot of pleasantries exchanged between those two teammates. It's probably about the only thing that Herbert can beat him at is table tennis. I shouldn't say that, sorry. No, but Johnny's realistic about that. But, you know, Schumacher is a world champion. He's a winner. He's a very Senna-type person, and there's no way he's going to palm off any of his knowledge to anybody else. Why should he? He wants to win. He cannot show any of his weaknesses up to anybody. And if he did give Johnny all the gen, which I think in the beginning he gave him a lot of the information, he knows that Johnny is capable of beating him, so why should he?
That is what Herbert exactly said. My mistake was I was too quick in my early efforts for the team, and Schumacher began to see me as a threat. All a part of the wonderful world of Formula One team dynamics. You ride on the nose of Herbert's car. Briefly. Underneath the old banking, heading for the Ascari chicane.
And he should be in any time for fuel. But it must be lovely to be out there just feeling that, or knowing that you're in the lead just for a little while. Look at that empty bit of track. That doesn't very often happen in motorsport. There's a whole length of that back straight coming down the Parabolica, absolutely empty.
The crowd packed into the grandstands on the far side.
Just to hear that noise, that roar, is just that is unique to Monza.
The race leader, Johnny Herbert, is in the pits on lap number 29. The crew will go to work, being very careful with that fuel hose. There's a camera looking out the back. This will put Jean Alesi into the lead and Gerhard Berger into second. Using all the RPMs to get the clutch engaged. Meanwhile, here come the Ferrari teammates across the start-finish line.
And we have seen already that, of course, that Berger was really quite a bit quicker than anybody else, and of course quicker than Alesi. So I think we're going to see a very interesting bit of racing going on here. And there's not really too much animosity between these two drivers. They're both in the same team. They're both going to run for Benetton next year. And of course, my goodness, wouldn't both of them love to win this race? Hark at that crowd roaring. You can just hear them in the background. Turn up the volume and listen.
The only thing that can outshout a Ferrari engine is a Tifosi crowd.
They cry if you win and they cry if you don't win. They're wonderful.
Ferrari has been in the news all weekend, not only the driver's situation, but Niki Lauda, their former world champion and team consultant the last couple of seasons, has left the team. He said it was a possibility when the drivers all changed, but apparently he is not seeing eye to eye with Jean Todt, the Frenchman who came over to run the team and frankly has made major improvements in it. Niki Lauda has apparently ended his association as a consultant with the Ferrari team.
It makes you wonder whether he might go with Mr. Prost to McLaren. Or consultant there.
Or perhaps with Berger to Benetton. Or maybe just go back to running his airline, Lauda Air. He recently, as you see the Ferrari crowd in their chips, there is Jean Todt, who had great success with the Peugeot sports car team. Niki Lauda tends to name his airplanes after famous people. He has a couple named for John Lennon and Janis Joplin. He recently acquired a new Boeing 767, which he named for the late Ayrton Senna.
Listen to that note of that car. It really is unique. That's Ferrari. And of course, for me, it brings back fond memories of the days many, many hundreds of years ago when I was there. And I can feel that I'm driving again at Ferrari. There's something so special about it.
Another look at the Ferraris flashing through the chicanes. Now, you and I were at Monza a few years ago in your first effort with us here at ESPN in Formula One. And as we walked around the racetrack, the corner workers remembered you.
Well, I used to walk back so often.
No. That is in the nature of Ferrari, that they remember their drivers from years ago. And so to come to a place like this decades later and have them say, Derek Bell, I remember Ferrari.
Yeah, it's very special. It's something very special. Although it did nothing for my career, it's still the greatest memories that I have were racing for Ferrari, strange enough. Mind you, nobody in motorsport or in the world ever knows that I drove for Ferrari because it was before the time of TV covering it and so on, but it was still the greatest experience of my life.
Second pit stop for Tyrrell. This is Mika Salo. Looks like it's going to be a quick one.
It is. Very, very quick. But it's his second stop. He's been in already for tyres after he had that little roundabout in the first chicane when he went back sideways.
Salo was pitting from the 9th spot, 1 lap down. He was the first car 1 lap down as 8 cars remain on the lead lap. Well, once again, Pedro Diniz, all kinds of brake problems, and it looked like the left front wheel, the suspension or steering has broken.
Something went really astray there.
On Gerhard Berger's car.
Nasty moment. I mean, he was really moving on when that collapsed, whatever it was that broke.
The left front wheel was definitely askew.
You know, they're going very high speeds when they're touching these curbs on this circuit. They get used to doing it on other circuits. I know you said earlier that they flattened out some of the curbs. Here you go here. Look at that left front wheel really towed right out as he comes in there. He did very, very well to hold it straight. Whoa, and it's broken away totally. No steering whatsoever. Well, he was very lucky that didn't happen in the previous corner, but it was probably accentuated by the braking as he came into it.
There was body work on the right side pod, but that had been there for a while, that ding in the red bodywork. The left front would be the tire to hit that curb as they came through the Lesmos, so perhaps that's how it broke. Nevertheless, we are down to 1 Ferrari. However, it is leading Jean Alesi, who took his first win earlier this year in Canada. On the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve driving the number 27 Ferrari that is so much a part of the Villeneuve legend. So the Tifosi still hold out hope. We'll be back with more live from Monza and more of the Italian Grand Prix. We're back live at Monza with our Haviland race recap. The leader is Jean Alesi, the lone remaining Ferrari in this race. There you see Gerhard Berger's number 28 parked by the side of the road. We have had 6 lead changes between 6 drivers, and virtually all of our heavy hitters are now out of the race. As you take a look at the attrition, just 12 cars remain in the race, the top 7 of them on the lead lap. The prominent retirees, in addition to Gerhard Berger, who just dropped out, Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill. Hill punted the world champion up the back when he could not get his Williams slowed down. David Coulthard, the pole man and early race leader, suffered a wheel failure after taking it off the racetrack in the Ascari chicane. We have had plenty of action. As you see, Mark Blundell making his way around. He is back in the 7th spot, last car on the lead lap. Now let's take a look at what happened to Gerhard Berger moments ago. You see him at the back left of your screen. It doesn't appear to have hit anything, but we saw sparks and then the smoke.
It looks like something exploded, almost like the disc exploded. But and then it severed the front wheel, but something real, I mean, real lot of smoke and sparks, not just simply like the wheel came apart. I mean, there was a major collapse there. Difficult to say, but I'm sure Berger has a very good idea of what happened.
There is Berger with his cadre of police discussing the issue. So his final Monza Italian Grand Prix for the moment with the Ferrari team. Of course, Gerhard Berger has had 2 tours of duty with Ferrari. At age 36, I think it's probably safe to assume he will not return, and that is certainly a poignant moment for him. There's Johnny Herbert, presently second to Jean Alesi in the race. He too has won his first Grand Prix this year. Look at the top 6 in points and where they are in the race. Schumacher gone. Damon Hill, see ya. David Coulthard, history. Gerhard Berger gone. So Jean Alesi will move up. Coulthard will almost certainly lose his position in the points if Johnny Herbert can keep it on the racetrack. Speaking of which, you see Mika Salo going by in the Tyrrell. He has had a big off at the Lesmos. And there is Berger, ever the darling of the Ferrari fans, perhaps of the modern era, the most typically Ferrari driver, the driver most closely associated with the team. He has done so much good work for them since returning in 1993.
It's going to be very interesting to see how Johnny Herbert handles this, because Johnny's always been overwhelmed by Schumacher, apart from obviously the Grand Prix in Britain when he won. But here he is with a chance of winning almost on merit. And he has got a chance to push Alesi. And he's got to bring out that star quality that Johnny, we know, is capable of, yet we don't necessarily see very often.
And here's a man with something to do as well. Jean Alesi, never challenged for his speed, but often for his head, his racecraft. Now he has an opportunity to show that he can take a car to the finish.
And Herbert actually took a second off Alesi that lap. He's got it down from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. That's remarkable in one lap. Believe me, around that circuit.
Well, perhaps Jean Alesi is tempering his enthusiasm. He does have room over Johnny Herbert. Alesi said it this weekend, the best parting gift I could give to the Tifosi would be a victory for them today at Monza. Recall last year he sat on pole for this race, but in his first pit stop, he had problems with the transmission, got out of the car, drove to his home in Monte Carlo with his brother Jose by his side. At one point in the drive, Jose had to tell him, look, John, stop traveling at this speed or I'm getting out right now. There's Mika Salo, as we mentioned, on and off the racetrack. The Tyrrell team still struggling. Plenty of power from that Yamaha V10. And Jules Boullion looking for a way-by.
And he gets it. Zips through on the inside. No locking up of brakes there. A lot of these tail-enders are having trouble actually getting their brakes as efficient as the front of the top teams. I don't know what the systems are, but they're finding their brakes less effective.
That was a pass for position, by the way. Boullion is now in the 9 spot, and Mika Salo drops back to 10.
Cool. Herbert's really catching up now. He's closer than 6 seconds behind, that's for sure. No, closer than 7, should I say. He might even be in the 6s this time.
From high overhead, hard braking, and then feed on the power as quickly as you dare. There goes Johnny Herbert out of your picture.
And there's Häkkinen coming down behind him.
And Rubens Barrichello just behind him.
So it looks like we could have a rather an exciting finish this race, having had some rather quiet moments throughout this, interspersed with the incidents of people flying off and stopping.
Good look there at the Jordan with some new aerodynamics for this race. The Jordan team recently reckoned that it cost them about $1,200 per mile to race their car. So if you take that as pretty much standard for the field, it gives you some idea of why Formula One is so expensive. Perhaps more expensive than it needs to be. Nevertheless, the most expensive form of motorsport on the planet. You ride now with Mika Häkkinen, I believe.
He doesn't know which way to go here.
I beg your pardon, this is Mark Blundell, because I believe that's Eddie Irvine just ahead. Yes, thank you to the World Feed for confirming. Eddie Irvine has had absolutely no luck at all. The car's been unbalanced. He's been on and off the racetrack. Qualified well back, was even slower in the morning warm-up, but here he is in the 6th spot with a chance to pick up a point. Gerhard Berger wonders what might have been. Jean Alesi still holds his destiny in his own hands. On to the back stretch, up over 200 miles an hour, and then braking for the Parabolica. Jean Alesi leads Johnny Herbert and Mika Häkkinen. Tonight on ESPN, the most storied rivalry in baseball continues as the Red Sox take on the New York Yankees from Yankee Stadium. Do I recall that the Yanks won the first 2 games of this set? Either way, Boston leads the American League East by a ton. The Yanks are in the American League wildcard race. 8 p.m. Eastern Time live, Sunday Night Baseball here on ESPN. Here at the Grand Prix of Italy, Jean Alesi leads Johnny Herbert. Herbert right there has gotten around Ukio Katayama, who was holding him up just that little bit. There you see the running order. There's the pits for the Jordan-Peugeot team.
So they're going to do a 2-stop race. Maybe more are than 2. No, I think they'd have been in already. We don't know much about it this time, do we? There was usually everybody's very confident of how many stops they're going to be, but this is certainly a one-stop race for the big teams.
Well, for the lesser teams, 1 stop has been... Oh, and Eddie Irvine has parked it from 6th place.
I wonder if we can have any left at the end of this. It's getting terribly, very difficult out here, but Alesi is now pulling out just a little bit. He's pulled it up to 7.5 seconds ahead of Herbert. Herbert did get tangled up back there, as you know, with Katayama, so maybe that was a little bit of a contributing factor, but Herbert's still with a great chance to win this race. Got to drive immaculately.
11 cars remain in the race. Johnny Herbert runs second. What a career he has had. Terrible injuries in a Formula 3000 accident, given his first break by the Benetton team. Drove beautifully for them in the season opener in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, but just a few races later was dropped by the team, who feared that his injuries would not allow him to perform up to his maximum. And he returned to the Benetton team after a long stretch with Lotus. Has done well as Schumacher's teammate despite the recent friction. Won his first race earlier this year, the British Grand Prix, when Schumacher and Hill crashed out. And now it appears that Johnny Herbert will be a journeyman once again. But he says, I still have it. I know what I can do.
He's got the most amazing character, the most wonderful personality. He's very quiet, down to earth, and when he spoke about Schumacher the way he did, he meant it. He wasn't really being rude. He was stating a fact that that's what the sort of guy is, and that's what Johnny will tell you. He calls a spade, as we say.
The Formula One beach boy. His short-cropped blonde hair. Wears a lot of T-shirts and OP equipment. The Jordan team expecting someone. By now they no doubt know that Eddie Irvine has parked his Jordan-Peugeot.
And Barrichello's lying 4th, so it could well be him.
Unless they want to rent the space, it better be Barrichello. There was a sign hung out at the racetrack this weekend that said, 1 Alesi today is worth 100 Schumachers tomorrow. Right now, the owner of that sign probably has all the beers he can drink. There is Jean Alesi. Alesi meaning after you in French. He couldn't have a less appropriate name. Johnny Herbert definitely closing up. I don't think it's 7.5 seconds now.
It might have made a difference on that lap. You don't know just exactly where that was taken. That should have been the start-finish line, but Johnny's made some time up through the turns there.
A lot of interesting rumors going on around the racetrack. We've talked before about Michelin returning to Formula One. Their #1 motorsportsman, Pierre de Pasquier, has been at a number of the recent Formula One races, and there are rumors that some of the Goodyear contracted teams have been testing Michelin tires secretly in France. Now we understand that the Bridgestone-Firestone Mammoth Tire Company has 150 guests at the race this weekend in Monza. So one wonders whether that Japanese tire giant might be considering a return to Formula One as well, or a turn to Formula One.
I always find it I think it's always a bit tough. Goodyear stay there through thick and thin. They've stayed there through all the hiatuses over the years of 3 or 4 different manufacturers, and then they've always stuck in there. They provide all the teams with tires. Obviously, some they have to charge. They put a tremendous amount of budget into it. And then the other teams just can come back in when they like, come up with latest stuff that they've been developing while Goodyear are supplying, and they just come back in, sort of take the ice cream and the cake, and then do 2 or 3 seasons and pull out. And everybody says, well, who's going to give us tires? And Goodyear say, okay, we'll stay in then, we'll stay in. So Goodyear stay in,
we're still
supply
here.
them again. They're still there. They're always there, but I don't think they get treated fairly.
Well, they certainly deserve a tremendous vote of thanks for all that they have accomplished, the safety measures that they have provided for so many different forms of motorsport. When you consider all of the different series in road racing, stock car racing, drag racing, short track, you name it, Goodyear has a tire for just about everyone. Their research and development process in Akron, where virtually all of their racing tires are made, including their Formula One tires, is absolutely astonishing. A computer-aided process that creates a picture every 20 feet around every racetrack in the world that their tires perform on. And those tires are under constant development. A great vote of thanks to Goodyear. We've got a break coming up. More action to come from the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Stay with us. Ferrari is out front. To add Ferrari's first victory in the 90s here at Monza. Now, moments ago, Rubens Barrichello suffered a tremendous disappointment. His Jordan-Peugeot is now parked by the side of the racetrack. He has dropped out while running in the points, and that means the Jordan team is now finished. There is Eddie Irvine walking in. He will be joined shortly by his teammate. There's the gap from Alesi to Herbert. That battle continues.
We just saw coming out of the parabolica a wisp of smoke out of the bed of Alesi's car, and he's actually lost 2 seconds to Johnny Herbert in the last 3 laps. So there is smoke there. I don't know if that really is smoke or just rich engine, but Alesi is slowing. He's coming in the pits. Alesi in the pits. That is not what we anticipated at all, and you don't always tell when you show a bit of footage about the last time that Ferrari won. You're sure as eggs, you're going to get a problem. That puts Johnny Herbert in the lead. There's a fire at the back. I did notice as he came out of the Ascari curve, there were flames at the back of the car, but they went out. And he's got it again there.
They hit it briefly with a fire extinguisher. Will they try to send him out? The crew is saying, leave us alone. No, they're saying cut it now. Problems at the right rear wheel for Jean Alesi.
There were flames coming out of that, under the right-hand side rear of the car as he came out of the Ascari curve on the last time, but I thought it might have been sunlight or something, but it was certainly something very bright and orange when he came in. That leaves Johnny in the lead. No Ferrari win here this weekend. Well, there'll be a lot of very sad people here, and I guess the car parks will be getting busy again as all the fans stream out, not the least bit interested in who the heck wins from now on. There aren't too many up there on the lead lap, are there? There's 4 cars on the lead lap.
Jean Todt goes over to put his arm around his man, Jean Alesi, who gave it such a great fight. And you hear the PA announcer in the background. Man who so desperately wanted to give these passionate Ferrari fans a victory. So Ferrari is now finished. Joining so many other teams on the sidelines, we have 9 cars remaining in the race with less than 10 laps to go. In fact, 6 laps now remain. Thank you very much. And Johnny Herbert leads.
And one shouldn't say it because it's been 2 years today since the last time a Renault engine failed in a race. That's quite something, isn't it? You think of all the races they've done, Benetton and Williams-Renault, and they've just had, this is the first time for 2 years they've had an engine failure.
That was Damon Hill's failure on Friday, I believe it was, and that was because something got sucked into an air intake, perhaps a stone. Here's Alesi.
I did see them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they're the flames.
The right rear, looks like the brake disc caught fire or something.
There's always the possibility it actually went through the brakes.
Something is falling out there at the back, so perhaps a brake disc decomposed for Jean Alesi, who's getting a huge round of applause from the crowd, and well earned. He gave it everything he had. One more look, definitely flames at the right rear. And you see something dragging there. Something is disintegrating at the right rear of the Ferrari.
Yeah, something's dragging.
Looks like a wire lead of some sort. Oh, he almost threw it off the racetrack. So a great bit of driving in addition to tremendous heartbreak for the driver, half French, half Sicilian.
I bet this man cannot believe, nor can Frentzen believe.
We are still 5 laps from the completion of this race, and anything can still happen. Stand by for more live from Italy. Well, the crowd of Tifosi may be on their way out of the Monza Autodrome, but we are still here. Bob Varsh and Derek Bell with you. Johnny Herbert leads, looking for his second career victory. Häkkinen in second, Frentzen in third. That would be the best performances for McLaren and Sauber this year, respectively. Mark Blundell, the only other car on the lead lap, so the potential for great points today for McLaren. Here you see we've had absolutely tremendous attrition. Just a handful of cars remain in this race. Both Ferraris are gone, both Williams. One Benetton, but it's not driven by Michael Schumacher. It is being driven by Johnny Herbert.
I bet Mika Salo cannot believe his luck. He's been off the road twice. He's had an extra pit stop, and he's still lying in fifth place. That's astonishing.
And just one lap down. There you see Rubens Barrichello's Jordan parked at the back of her screen. Back of the track, that is. He pulled off just moments ago. 3 laps remaining.
If the Marlboro McLaren Mercedes does come in second place, which it's obviously running that way, it's incredible for them, development-wise, to think that they actually get in the car to finish now and be relatively competitive. I mean, they needed this sort of a finish. And, of course, Häkkinen had quite a few incidents over the weekend. He went off twice on Friday in warm-up and then in qualifying. And so, no, he wasn't exactly the most popular man in the McLaren tent. So I think the way he's driven through today, and, of course, Blundell finishing at this time, running in fourth place, is really very, very good for the Mercedes sort of morale, one might say.
There is Mika Häkkinen, who was thrust into the role of team leader with McLaren, perhaps before he was ready for it, but he has certainly given it his all, driving with a different engine virtually every year with the team. 2 laps remaining. Of the top 6 in points, 5 are now out of the race. Only Johnny Herbert, who will pass David Coulthard for 4th place, and in fact will pass Jean Alesi for 3rd place in points. So Johnny Herbert, if he keeps it on the racetrack and wins this race with less than 2 laps remaining, he will leap all the way from 5th to 3rd in points. And as you see, he has Mika Häkkinen well in hand.
Yes, he's pulled out about 7 seconds on Häkkinen in the last 15 laps, and obviously I think you'll find that Häkkinen's philosophy has been, I better keep this lot together because I'm not doing too well within this team right now. And obviously Mercedes are desperate to get feedback from finishing a race. If you don't finish it, you're not going to get feedback as to the performance of the engine, wear and so on. So it's vital that that car finishes, and they're running right now in 2nd and 4th place.
At the beginning of the day, I said it stacked up as an interesting race. It has certainly been that. This 66th running of the Italian Grand Prix, 45th running here at Monza. And this front straightaway has been a part of racing lore for so many years. Final lap now for Johnny Herbert. It will be for Mika Häkkinen when he finishes the Parabolica and heads on to that historic front straightaway. The circuit has been here since 1922, one of the oldest in existence. There's Mark Blundell making his way around Mika Salo. They say it is the 3rd oldest behind Brooklands and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Brooklands in England, of course, now closed. Folks at the Wisconsin State Fairgrounds in Milwaukee will tell you they've been racing cars on the Milwaukee Mile a lot longer than that. So let's call this the 4th oldest racetrack. 3rd oldest still in active use. It was a military dump during World War II. The grandstand on the front straightaway, built in 1938, has virtually not changed in all that time. A place of great history, a cathedral of the sport of Formula One Grand Prix racing. And Johnny Herbert is now poised to take his place in the pantheon of champions who have raced here. The Benetton team may be Italian-sponsored, the engines may be French, but it is a British team through and through, and their British driver, Johnny Herbert, is preparing to take his 2nd career victory. Knowing his career with the team is over, he is going to go out in style. With 5 races remaining in the 1995 Formula One World Driving Championship, Johnny Herbert has come back to take his 2nd career victory, his 1st in Britain, his 2nd at Monza, and a Formula One driver, particularly of British heritage, could hardly ask for more. We'll take a quick time out and be back to start wrapping things up in a moment. Back live at Monza. We're running out of time. There's a look at the final results. Johnny Herbert, his second career victory by 17 seconds over Mika Häkkinen, Heinz-Harald Frentzen third. Best performances for their respective teams, McLaren-Mercedes and Sauber-Ford. In the end, 9 cars were still running. Rubens Barrichello collects a return trip to the pits on Johnny Herbert's winning car. Here's a look at our Drivers' Championship. With 5 races remaining, Schumacher and Hill remain 15 points apart. Herbert leaps up to third in points, displacing John Alesi and David Coulthard. In the Constructors' Championship, Benetton-Renault beginning to draw away, now 20 ahead of Williams-Renault, with the Ferrari team trailing in third. Checkered flag coverage of this Grand Prix of Italy will be coming your way October 14th at 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Our next stop on the Formula One World Championship will be the Grand Prix of Portugal on September 24th, 2 weeks from now at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to thank Derek Bell for joining us. Sports Weekly is coming up next. The sports reporters will be along shortly, followed by Sports Weekly. I'm Bob Barsha. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you from Estoril in Portugal in 2 weeks' time. So long for now from Monza.